Sorry. Good morning, everyone, again, and welcome to the FSB National Webinar on Transitioning to Net Zero with the Zero Carbon Business Portal. Thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Frederica Andres. I'm the FSB Policy Advisor for Environment, Energy and Transport, and today's moderator. I will shortly be handing over to our guest speakers, Edward and Chris from the Broadway Initiative, who will both be talking about the Zero Carbon Business Portal and how it can help you cut carbon and thrive in a new low carbon economy. Ed and Chris will deliver a short presentation before we open to questions. Please use the questions to panelist button to send over your questions, and we will endeavor to answer as many as possible. Feel free to add questions during the presentation. Today's session will also be recorded and shortly available on our on-demand page on the FSB website in case you want to watch it again. And finally, if you aren't an FSB member yet, we'd love to have the opportunity to speak to you further about the benefits of joining. So please do visit our website to book a meeting with a membership advisor. And now, without further ado, Ed and Chris, the floor is yours.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Frederica, and really good to see you all this morning. And thank you very much for joining. So, as Frederica said, we wanted to share with you what we're doing, how we're working with FSB to support small businesses in the transition to net zero, and how we're working to provide you with the right advice at the right time. So just a little bit about who we are, what the Broadway Initiative is, and how we're working with FSB. Next slide, please, Chris. So the Broadway Initiative is an alliance of the main business organisations working on sustainability. FSB is right at the centre of that and has helped bring this collaboration together, recognising that net zero is an enormous challenge. Decarbonising the economy to mitigate climate change is an enormous challenge facing the business community, and that we all need to work together on this. So FSB has played a sort of key role in bringing together this collaboration, and specifically to help smaller businesses. So we work actually across the sort of climate and environment agenda. And then, Chris, if you move on to the next slide, we've put together a specific partnership of organisations that have a real role to play in working together to support small businesses. So FSB right at the centre of that, working with the British Chambers of Commerce, CBI, the IOD, British Chambers of Commerce, British Retail Consortium, etc. The DNOs, the electricity networks, so the likes of Northern Power Grid, Western Power Distribution, Electricity Northwest, depending where you are in the country, and we're bringing others on board. And then we'll come on to this later, we're extending this partnership to work with other organisations that are well placed to work closely with small businesses. So the banks and local government and others. So we're very much on a journey, but this is the partnership at the moment. We had one of the major banks join this morning, so the partnership is rapidly growing, so that we can all join up with government, which we're doing with regular meetings with ministers in the business department, so that we can join up and support you in the challenges ahead on decarbonisation. So if we move on to the next slide, please. So at the moment, this is, if you go to the FSB website, you can start accessing the materials we're starting to put together through that bit that says Zero Carbon Business Portal. But what we wanted to do today is to sort of open that up a little bit, explain what we're doing, and really get your feedback. As much as anything, we're really keen to get your ideas, your thoughts about what's needed to support you, the advice and support you need to help you decarbonise. So this is much a sort of a feedback session to us as us explaining what we're doing and how we're working with the FSB. So if we move on, and so please do put any comments, feedback as we go in the chat. I think there's also a Q&A function. I can see someone's already asked a question. So yeah, please do ask any questions and provide us feedback on the chat. So Chris, if we move on to the next slide, please. And this is just sort of the big picture. The whole economy needs to decarbonise to reduce climate change. And as you'll know, the UK government has committed to net zero carbon emissions by 2050, which means entirely decarbonising the whole economy, which is effectively a massive industrial revolution, totally changing the way we power the economy, huge changes in how we work, but also huge business opportunities, particularly for smaller businesses. So there's a real question in how collectively we make sure that small businesses are able to take the opportunities of this this big change. But to do this successfully, we need to think ahead, we need to plan ahead, and we need to work together, and we need to make sure that small businesses aren't left behind. Obviously, that's the picture, but what net zero means depends entirely on what you're doing as a business. So, for example, if you've got buildings, ultimately that means you'll need to look at the fabric efficiency, the insulation and that kind of thing of buildings need to move eventually onto a non-fossil fuel source of fuel. That might be meaning moving to a heat pump at some stage. In terms of your transport, that means moving transport as we're beginning to learn onto electric. So electric cars, we're beginning to see electric buses, but bigger challenges down the road in terms of decarbonising fleet, making fleet electric, HGVs, shipping, aviation. So some other sort of bigger challenges along the road in terms of transport. Then in terms of energy, if you're using energy in your business for process heat and powering machinery, that again will need to decarbonise, whether that's moving onto electric or hydrogen or some other source of fuel. If you're in the farming sector, there's greenhouse gases in terms of nitrous oxide for crops, methane for cattle. That's an area where the scope to reduce, but probably not eliminate entirely. So also as part of this, it's looking at what are called carbon removals, which effectively means planting trees or other technologies to remove carbon from processes. And also supply chains. That's another big area in terms of supply chains will all need to be decarbonised. So that's another aspect of this. How do your supply chains decarbonize? How do you work with your supply chain? And for small businesses are often part of the supply chain for larger companies. So there are likely to be requirements coming down the line from larger companies, from government, in terms of what you need to do when supplying larger companies, but that as much brings opportunities to small businesses. So key question in all of this, what does it mean for me? What does decarbonisation mean for me? And so that's key question that we're trying to answer and work with you to make sure that we're able to support you. Two questions. We wanted to pause now and ask a couple of questions of you to start getting feedback in the chat. So just pause now and ask just to get a sense of how you're feeling about this. What are your motivations for decarbonising, if you started to think about it, and what do you see as the barriers to decarbonising, to moving towards net zero? So I'll pause there. Encourage you, put any thoughts down in chat. It'd be really good to get your feedback. Thanks, Richard. Strong one. Save the planet. Really important, I think, at a human level. That's what motivates many of us in this space. To what extent? Commitment to change. Brilliant. Gosh, I can't keep up. That's really helpful to get a picture. I have children, costs, better world for next generation, barrier generation. Really good to see this coming through. Responsibility. Brilliant. Well, we're probably not going to be able to react to all of this, but this is really helpful. We can take this away and just start to improve our picture of what it is that's motivating this community and how we can help. So perhaps give it another 20-30 seconds. Just to get down your motivations and any barriers. Brilliant. I'm going to hand over to my colleague Chris in a moment. And sorry, what I forgot to do, I think Federica did, but just I'm Ed Lockhart. I'm convener of the Broadway Initiative, and Chris is managing our programme on net zero. So much more expert than me, and I will hand over to Chris now.
Great, thank you very much. I can see comments still flooding in, which are extremely interesting and useful to understand. So in order to start with this project, we've always made a very deliberate attempt to keep ourselves user-led, because it's essential that any new work in this area is focused on doing something that actually adds and avoids contributing to confusion and uncertainty. So we started off by doing a discovery project, which we worked with a user research team to find out what it is that is needed in this area, specifically to support small businesses. And some of the conclusions that came through from this are listed here. So firstly, that report highlighted there was a very clear, a need for clear information. Sorry, so there's a lot of stuff out there, but it's often difficult to identify what exactly is really needed and really addresses your specific questions. Also, whatever is being done needs to be financially viable. And I can see from the comments that cost is a big concern. Often, there are significant investments required if you're changing big chunks of technology. Also, for some SMEs, really small businesses, the skill set might not lie in using digital tools or financial analysis. And these are kinds of things that you probably do need to be able to reach towards in achieving net zero and achieving the transition. So anything that we're producing needs to be very straightforward to use and not require additional skills to be discovered within your small business that you don't have time to address. It's also really important that whatever is presented is trusted and that sources are transparent. And as an organisation, we're extremely keen on making sure that what's provided across the partnership is highly trustworthy material. Also, that in order to make progress in this area, SMEs are heavily reliant on local networks and peer relationships. So there's a question as to how to make use of that. But also over the last couple of years, unsurprisingly, COVID-19 has been a massive challenge for everybody, and that this is one among many things that people are wrestling with at the moment. And fundamentally, all of this needs to be joined up in an easy to understand narrative. And what we concluded from all that analysis was really the inspiration to start this work, was that it would be a good idea to develop a free online information service focused specifically to address the user needs that have been identified, and to continue to delve into the really specific issues that people are facing to address those directly. What we want to be doing is both helping early adopters, so people who are really keen on this stuff and want to get moving really quickly, but also to support those who are not right at the forefront, but who are now starting to move in this direction. So the sort of early majority of people who are moving towards net zero. We also chose to start off focusing on overarching needs. So there are many common issues that many people will face, and that we want to make it easy to steer your way through. So focusing initially on where to start. What we've been doing is to develop it in an iterative way. So it's slightly techie language, but the first version that we built was described as an alpha site. And so the purpose of that really is just to test the concept, get something up that people can use, and then we can gather lots of feedback from it. And then to move on to build a beta site, which is where we are now. So we have a site, it's live, it's there for you to use. It's got lots of really useful content on it. But the reason why it's described as a beta is because it's continuing to evolve and develop as time progresses. So I'm just going to give you a quick summary of what is on the site at the moment. Obviously, the best way to understand this is to go and visit it directly, but this gives you an overview of what the main parts are. So the site is designed to make it easy for you to find the content you need. It's got a simple, clear, text-based style. The homepage helps you understand what is available on the site, so you can home in on what you need quickly. For those new to net zero, there's a page covering the basics in 30 seconds. We then have a set of topic guides that cover specific issues you may be wrestling with. As Ed mentioned, for example, buying an electric van or a heat pump. We then have a support directory that lists sources of free support in your area, for example, advice services offered in particular cities or council areas. We then have a simple tool that asks you for your industry sector and region and gives you a summary page combining tailored advice specific to your activities and pointing to sources of support near you. Also, we're maintaining an events calendar, and you can submit free events to be included. We have a library of short case studies, so you can see what others have done. And as I said, we're always developing new content, and we're currently focusing on building more in-depth sector guides, working closely with relevant trade associations, and we're starting that work with retail. And as Ed explained, the portal is supported by a partnership of organisations who have common interests in supporting trade association members, business customers and residents with neutral, free and trustworthy advice. We're expanding sponsoring partners to include more energy networks and banks, which will allow us to do more over the coming months. And the partner organisations form an oversight board which prioritises our development work, but that is in response to user research with our SME expert user group. This approach ensures that the content is designed to meet specific needs of people using the site, while also ensuring that we complement rather than duplicate what is available elsewhere. So we've already got some ideas about next delivery priorities, and what we're doing and what I'd like to do next is to get feedback on what you think the priorities should be. But our current list at the moment includes developing a more sophisticated tool to provide tailored advice according to the specific activities of your business. So I think sometimes it might be difficult to describe what exactly your business doesn't necessarily fit into a sort of neat sector in the way the government might look at it. So if you're able to say, well, I'm doing this activity and this activity and this activity, then we would be able to produce a piece of tailored guidance that addresses the specific, perhaps fairly niche things that you do. Another thought, which I'm pretty keen on, is expanding our series of sector guides, building on what we learnt, or what we will learn from our pilot in retail. We're also looking to improve links with local support organisations. We could be providing material on grants and finance available and how to apply. We could be doing more to highlight business opportunities emerging, for example, to address gaps in the market as new technologies roll out. So I was talking to one partner who was commenting that was just in their particular area, there was a lack of plumbers for installing new heat pumps. And so, in that particular situation, there's an opportunity there in that particular region. So the question is, how can we communicate those sorts of opportunities more effectively? We could be providing advice focused on measurement and reporting. I saw someone commenting on the difficulties of that in the chat. We could be enabling peer-to-peer collaboration through online forums. But also might be useful to highlight government and supply chain initiatives and the dates when they kick in. Again, I can see that some people are noting that the pressure to change comes along the supply chain. So if there are particular initiatives within a sector where, for example, retailers might be pushing towards net zero, understanding how you can respond to that could be useful content as well. We're also looking at improving the metrics and data that we collect from site use. And we could also be putting more effort into promoting and marketing the sites to reach more people. So what I'd really like to do at this point is just pause again and get your immediate thoughts on this question, which is, what types of content and online support should we prioritize? Keep an eye on the chat to see what thoughts emerge. Okay, so I can see more regional support, practical actions, all of the above, legal frameworks and grants. Reliable metrics, quick calculators. One-to-one installation sessions. Grants and where to get started. Accreditation, that's a new one. Easy wins, quick wins. Remaining competitive. Accreditation. Great. I mean, there's a variety of very useful items coming through there. Some of which are new things that we haven't got on our list at the moment. And this is really why it's so important for us to make sure that we're continually working with our real users, your good selves, to be continually getting feedback on what is going to be most helpful. I don't know if Ed or Frederica, you want to jump back in again at this point.
Thank you, Chris. Yes, thank you so much for the very exhaustive list of all the things you'd like to see on the platform. We'll take them back and obviously talk to Ed and Chris how we best can make sure that the information is shared with you and that you have all the guides and information available. Ed, would you like to answer any of the questions that have come in through the chat so far?
Thanks, Frederica. So Graham asks, who was the major bank? What we're doing at the moment, Graham, is we're in dialogue with all of the major banks and in discussion of that. What we'll do is announce once the new program is up and running. We'll announce who are the partners that have come on board so far. I'm slightly cautious about naming them today because we're working on exactly the terms and that kind of thing, and I think that they might well want to announce it formally. So we'll probably wait till we've got the new program up and running next month, and then sort of announce the whole lot, if that's right. Frederica, I don't know if you're able to answer the Loretta's question about vouchers.
Thank you, Ed. Not yet, unfortunately. We don't have a confirmation from government, but we are speaking to everybody, left, right, and centre, literally, to make this strong case for our Help to Green vouchers. We hope to have an update in this year as well, because we are very convinced that is a very easy way for businesses to get started on their journey. But yeah, happy, watch this space.
Brilliant. And then there was one I answered in chat, which is, what's the current business traffic on the site? At the moment, we're getting traffic in the hundreds of users per day. So far, we haven't done any marketing, because we've been through a phase of really just trying to sort of understand, engage with users to get the shape of the content right, as we put the new program together, and that board of all of the trade associations and the banks and others, then we'll have our new program of work. At the centre of that will be much more comms and marketing to get the site out there. So there's questions coming through, and brilliant feedback. Thank you very much for feedback, particularly around what kind of content is needed. Are there any other questions that people wanted to ask? We've got, I think, Lorna's. So I think that's probably feedback on what kind of guidance is most useful. So I think we're. So just in terms of, Chris, you moved us on to the next slide. Yeah. So there we've got how do you get involved? How do you provide feedback? So Chris's email is there in terms of giving feedback on the site. We'd also be interested to know if you're happy to participate in user research, and whether there are people who'd like to put themselves forward to be on our user group. What we are doing, as Chris said, alongside having the board, is having a user group that meets regularly to provide us feedback from different sectors, different parts of the country, in terms of what are the gaps, what do people need, that kind of thing, so that we're in regular dialogue. And we'll also have webinars regularly throughout the year to share what we're doing more widely, which will be open to anyone, and to provide feedback and have more dialogue about what is needed, and how we develop a joined up advice landscape, through all of these organisations collaborating together. So should we just move on to our final slide? Which is where you can find us. So on the FSB website, Zero Carbon portal, you can go direct to the site at Zero Carbon Business, and Chris's email is there. So I think, Frederica, unless you have points, I think we haven't got more questions coming through. So probably moving to the end of the session.
Yes, maybe if there are any questions about the site, any specific questions, how to use it, let us know now. We're obviously, as Ed said, very keen to have your feedback. But if there's anything that you would like to see specific on the website, I mean, we had a session already on that one. Just give us a shout, or maybe more, how you think we could improve the website, or how you'd like to contribute to it as well. But yeah, we still have some time, so feel free to send your questions over now. Perhaps you had a look at the website as well, maybe a question or two came up after you've browsed through the website. So we're happy to stick around for a little bit longer and wait for your questions. in the meantime, maybe it's also worth pointing out that Ed spoke at our national conference that we hosted in November. That was our big national conference on net zero. So there's, for anybody who's not really had a chance to look at the conference, it is available also on our FSB website, and you're obviously more than welcome to rewatch the sessions. Again, there was a really wonderful session from Ed speaking about the portal. That was obviously a few months ago, so the portal has developed, but there are also other sessions from Michael Baxter, for instance, from AIMA, talking about net zero and the background. So feel free to have a listen, get a cup of tea, and immerse yourself in this really interesting conference that we had in November alongside COP. Other events that are coming up from the FSB will always be announced on the website, and happy to have your input as well of what kind of more information you would like to see from our side, and also on the Zero Carbon Business Portal, but then also on the FSB Sustainability Hub. I think there was a question from Loretta again. She's asking, how often will the local support section be updated on the portal?
Should I take that? Thanks very much, Loretta. I mean, that's an ongoing thing. So we'll want to keep it up to date all the time, in terms of where things change, but also adding to it. And what we're doing is beginning to work with particular areas. So at the moment with Manchester, with London, with East Lancashire. So we're working sort of on some specific areas, but we're going to progressively go through, go around the country sort of to beef up those sections and to work out how to tie it in with local support. And I can see another one that's come in. Will there be opportunities to have one-to-one support with yourselves and a business to help with focus direction with individual business specific needs? We'll have to think about the best way of doing that. I mean, obviously we haven't got resource to help everyone on a one-to-one basis, but I mean, I think part of this is linking people in with local support that's available and funded by government in specific regions. So one of the things we want to do is to be able to direct people to the right support for them locally. So that's something that we'll want to do, but by putting the kind of general information that people need, and actually very tailored information, as Chris was saying, on site. But then at a certain point you will need one-to-one support, and there are lots of groups out there. So we'll try to link you up to appropriate people locally, but also through the professional bodies, for example, through AIMA, the Institute of Environmental Management and Assessment, who have a network of 17,000 sustainability advisors. So there are ways of doing that. We're also having, with FSB and other trade associations, quarterly meetings with ministers in the business department, as I mentioned, which is really providing sort of feedback to ministers about what support's needed more generally. So if there is need, for more one-to-one support and particular ways of structuring that, we'll be providing that feedback to ministers. So another question from Richard. I'm in the vending industry, part of retail. For SMEs, scope 1 and 2 is relatively straightforward, but scope 3 and indirect impact are challenging to measure and priorities. What's the best way forward on that? I don't know if Chris or Frederica have an immediate answer to that. I mean, that is something that all of the trade associations that we're working on in specific sectors are grappling with. I think it's challenging. I think there are specific ways forward in individual sectors. So, for example, in the housing development sector, there's something called EPDs, which all the suppliers need to provide, environmental product declarations, I think, which explain the carbon emissions of the product, so that as a home builder you can sort of add up, what the carbon is of your supply chain. So I think, generally there aren't always answers on that yet, but it's something that we're all working on across different sectors to work out the best ways of doing that. But I think, we can. We'll work with we'll feed that back to the retail sector and ask them. The British Retail Consortium have their plan. They're working particularly on supply chain, so we can ask them how they're approaching that. So then Suzanne's question: renewable energy company offering solar and EV charging installations for free in return for a 20-year fixed price energy contract to enable those SMEs who are unable to afford the upfront capital costs and want to spread the costs over 20 years. Do you have a process for us to sign up as an FSB partner, offer our services on your website? So I think that will come back to you on that. That's something we need to work through in terms of how we eventually link people up and link people up to the suppliers in each of these areas. I think as a general rule, we want to be neutral. We want to provide people with the suppliers that are out there, but in a neutral way. So that's something we'll work through.
I think there was a question specifically on carbon. Scope 1 to 3, and obviously we're more than happy to have a separate session on that one, but just to quickly answer that those are the categories that were set by the greenhouse gas protocol, and they basically explain your emissions, all direct emissions, for instance, from heating your fleet, then the indirect emissions from electricity purchased, and then also all other indirect emissions. But we can definitely delve into more details with that one at a later stage at another webinar, but there's also information available on the Zero Carbon Business that explains everything in detail, so you have a bit of an overview of what actually that really entails. But yeah, Ed, do you have anything else to add to that one?
No, I think I was going to pick up on Sarah's question actually about the how will the website be connected to other key platforms. I think that's a really good question, and something that what we see this as is an ecosystem of advice, services and support. So what we're looking to do is have those conversations. Chris met with the London Business Hub earlier on this week to start working out how we link up with them, and I think through our local pages of support, we're beginning to link with all of the regions. But I think that's very much our intention, is to provide a user-friendly way of linking through to the most appropriate sources and resources for whichever business. What we realise is that in this space of net zero, there are hundreds of websites. There's a new website every day, and if you just go to Google, it's confusing. So I think what we're starting to do is to provide a central portal, a way in, so that you get to the information that you need and the right source of support as directly as possible. And increasingly, as Chris said, will provide the ability for you to say, where you are, what you're doing, which sector you're in, and then be able to provide, a much more tailored route through to the advice that you need. Good point from Lawrence about all of the local authorities beginning to work on climate actions. So that's important to link through to them. Good point from David about linking to the North Tyne Combined Authority, who've launched a Green Skills for Growth initiative with grants and training. We'll note that. Community forum might be useful. This is something we've been looking at, and it would be good to get feedback on the best way of doing that, and how to sort of link businesses up. It's something a lot of people have given feedback on, that it would be useful to have online chat forum, the ability to ask questions and answer them. We're starting that in the home sector, some kind of forum. So we'll see how that works and look at the potential to expand that out. But brilliant feedback. Feel free to provide more I mean, more detail on any of the points that you're making, either now or subsequently to Chris. So, you know, Richard's point about the most effective wins rather than the quick ones that might not help much. I think it's a good point. I mean, there's lots out there sort of saying switch your light bulbs, you know, some of the sort of, you know, the simpler, quicker things to do, but ultimately this is about total decarbonisation. So how do we make sure that we're on the right path? But any more feedback on that would be helpful. Yeah, no, really rich set of feedback. So we'll take this back and look at it properly. And thank you for helping us out, Jenny, on the scope 1 to 3, pointing to the right guidance on that. That's really helpful. So I think, Frederica, I think probably the feedback's slowing down now. I think people probably fed back the stuff that's top of mind. It's been really useful to talk to you, get your feedback. We will be having regular sessions throughout the year as we develop the picture. We'd be really keen to keep the dialogue up with you, get your feedback back, you know, through sessions like this. And we'll work with Frederica and colleagues at the FSB to make you aware of further webinars throughout the year.
Exactly. Thank you, Ed, and thank you so much, everybody, for the brilliant feedback from everybody. It was slightly overwhelming, but we'll take everything back, have a look in detail. If there's anything else, as I said, please feel free to reach out to Chris or the FSB as well, and we'll relay any feedback back to the team at Broadway. But yeah, this was really helpful. Please visit the Zero Carbon Business Portal. It's, as Chris has said, evolving. It is growing, and obviously with your feedback, it will be growing to the platform that works for small businesses, because that's the idea, is obviously creating something that is a very good tool for you to make it as easy as possible to, you know, find your path to net zero. I think if there are no further comments from our attendees, or any comments from you, Chris and Ed, I think we can conclude the webinar today. Any other questions, we're more than happy to take offline as well. The next webinar that we're hosting in the Net Zero series, I know there was a question earlier on a conference. At the moment, we don't plan on having another Net Zero conference, but we'll have other events about net zero, and the next one that will be on EVs, and I will put the link in the chat, and that's coming up on the 23rd of February, and that will be together with UK Power Networks, the Energy Savings Trust, and Ricardo, to talk about the transition to EVs. So hopefully to see you there as well. And as we've said earlier, the recording will be available on the FSB website in the coming days. So if you want to revisit the webinar, if you've not really been able to stay on focused, because there was a lot of information, obviously, it will be available, you can rewatch it. But yeah, thank you so much again to our speakers, Chris and Ed, and I look forward to the next webinar. And have a good rest of your day, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, everyone. Good to see you.